What up, y'all? It's Chem Thug. Actually, it's not Chem Thug. It's Dr. Chem Thug. Your boy did it. Your boy did it. 6 years. 6 years and it's done. Thank you to everybody who sent me encouraging words, sent me nice messages. Very much appreciate it. This is not something one does by themselves, as I'm sure you might imagine, which, if you didn't know, in order to get a PhD, you kind of have to do two very important things. One, you got to find an institution that'll accept you as a student and let you actually do some research work. And then once you're there, you got to find some faculty who will supervise this research work and kind of co-sign that it is valid and new knowledge that was not previously known in your field of study. You might be thinking that last part of developing new knowledge is the hard part, but actually, getting into an institution as a student, that's the tricky part. Because of people who have done this before me, it made it a lot easier for people with my background to actually get into one of these institutions. And I want to talk about one of those people. Specifically, I want to talk about the first Black woman to ever get a PhD in chemistry in the US, Dr. Marie Maynard Daly. So Dr. Daly's from Queens. She was born in 1921. She was the daughter of Ivan Daly and Helen Page, both of whom were very, very instrumental in her actually studying science. Her father also tried to be a chemist, but couldn't afford the tuition at Cornell, so he had to stop. And her mother had a super extensive library, apparently, and just read to her all the time, particularly books on science. And this, along with general family support, helped Dr. Daly make her way through Hunter College High School, graduate with honors, and get to Queens College, which was a fairly new college at the time, but get her bachelor's in chemistry from there, which already, that's kind of a lot. Like, at the time, not necessarily common for women to be able to pursue higher education, especially Black women. But she wasn't done there. She wasn't trying to stop at just that bachelor's. And she kind of got lucky given the time in which she decided to do this, because it was around 1941 when World War II was happening. So because of World War II, a lot of institutions got a lot more flexible about admitting women because there weren't really men applying because, they were going to fight in the war. And she took her shot and got a fellowship to get her master's in chemistry from NYU before then getting another fellowship to get her PhD from Columbia University, where she was able to work in the lab of Dr. Mary Letitia Caldwell, who's another trailblazing chemist, woman in STEM, only woman faculty at Columbia, one of very few in the country at the time in chemistry. But under her tutelage and her guidance, Dr. Daly did some pretty epic work just for her PhD. Dr. Daly's PhD work involved understanding what this enzyme called amylase does when it reacts with cornstarch. At the time, we didn't actually understand that enzymes were proteins like across the board. Now we know that, but then we didn't necessarily. We also didn't necessarily understand how and why enzymes work the way that they did in all cases. Her PhD work laid a lot of the groundwork for us to be able to say definitively that enzymes are proteins, and also these are the things that happen when these enzymes act on sugars and starches. And this was just the start of her career of adding new knowledge to the body of the available literature. Another of Dr. Daly's heavily cited works is actually mentioned in the famous Nobel Prize lecture of Dr. James Watson, where he discusses the structure of DNA. Yes, Dr. Daly published some papers wherein she provided direct evidence that proteins, literally the machinery of our bodies, pretty much everything in our bodies gets run by proteins. She demonstrated that you need RNA or ribonucleic acid in order to make proteins. If you've taken a biology class at any point in your life, you probably learned that as like a basic fundamental sort of situation. Yeah, that's something we kind of figured out within the last 100 years. And she played a big, heavy role in us knowing that, yes, you need RNA to turn the DNA into actual proteins. Something that's just in a textbook now. One of the things that she managed to do during her research career. Perhaps a little less well known, but one of the other papers that Dr. Daly put out is a paper where she describes these things called lysine-rich histones. Histones are kind of like spools of thread, except the thread is your DNA, and the histone is what your DNA and your cells wraps around. She was not the first person to mention the existence of these lysine-rich histones. However, she was the first person to provide the detailed account that she did of their properties and their nature. Her work helped us to further understand how our bodies decide which parts of our DNA get unwrapped from those histones and then get turned into protein with the help of RNA And this helped lay the groundwork for essentially genetics as a science as we know it. So Dr. Daly was a pretty prolific scientist. Can't really talk about every publication that she had, but probably some of her more famous work that she did later in her life was her work understanding and describing the links between high blood pressure, hypertension, cholesterol, and this disease called atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is a name for a condition wherein your blood vessels in your body kind of start to get coated on the insides with like fat cells and the like. And as you might imagine, if your blood vessels are clogged, your blood doesn't pump the way it's supposed to, kind of causes a problem for your body. And yeah, we want to understand a little bit more about how to make sure that your blood vessels are flowing the way that they need to, because a lot of this work helps to understand how heart disease happens and how heart attacks happen and how strokes happen. And her work helped to improve our understanding of these disease conditions by leaps and bounds. So yeah, Dr. Daly made a lot of very important and material contributions to our understanding of the body and various disease conditions within it. That is what makes her a very impressive and important historical figure within the sciences. The fact that she was a Black woman trying to do all of this is what made this so much harder for her and so much more significant. This is why I choose to honor Dr. Daly, because if it weren't for her and the work of people like her, it'd have been a lot harder for me to actually get my degree. So thank you so much for watching to the end. I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found it entertaining. And until next time, Dr. Chem Thug.